Сила. Никишин здорово там. Решил сам прорываться. Хоккей на встречных курсах. Сила.
Закрыл Никишин зону. Бросок, гол, девятку. Какой бросок невероятный. Интервью, да?
Ой, Андрей, музыка звучит. Попрошу коллег чуть-чуть посмотреть.
The Hurricanes have a lot of young, exciting prospects, but none of them are as coveted as Alexander Nikishin. As he sets the KHL on fire with his amazing skating ability, his size, physical brand of play, and scoring ability, the Hurricanes may have just found their next franchise defenseman. Size, strength, and skating ability. These are the foundations of Alexander Nikishin's game. His edge work allows him to bait and deceive forecheckers. This also gives him great abilities to move the puck on transition and distribute it, as well as execute well-timed offensive zone entries. His capabilities skating combined with his frame make it difficult to take a puck away from Nikishin. Once he decides where he wants to be positioned, a combination of brute force and finesse will take over. With edge work this proficient, creates his own passing lanes and creates his own shooting lanes. This makes him a constant offensive threat, as he can always look for open ice, to position himself well to shoot, or to be a passing option, and preemptively position himself to defend off of the rush. Even more impressive than his edge work is his speed. Nikishin seamlessly transitions into his stride, has excellent acceleration and great stride extension. This allows him to create time and space or reduce time and space as needed, with or without the puck. This skating ability also lends itself well to the defensive side of his game, as he has very aggressive gap control. Puck carriers have little to no time to make a decision with Alexander Nikishin on the ice, and his upper body strength gives him excellent poke checking ability. But the real calling card of his defensive game is his physicality. One of the reasons why Alexander Nikishin has the nickname of Boom is his ability to lay seismic, thunderous hip checks. Being stable on his skates and having incredible core strength gives him this checking ability, and he uses it to ruthlessly deny entry. Nikishin's intimidating physicality can single-handedly neutralize a rush. Even if the puck carrier manages to chip it past Nikishin, he'll make sure that that's as far as they go. He never passes up an opportunity to finish a hit, and everyone knows it. A lot of times, puck carriers will distribute errant passes, and this results in a lot of turnovers. And if nothing else, those are forced just by Nikishin's presence alone. This high-intensity game extends to him defending in and around his own net, where he uses his strength to not allow a net front presence to materialize, and to help out his goaltender. Nikishin also has an impressive shot blocking ability. Using his frame and pure athleticism, this adds another layer of sandpaper on top of all the skill. This high-intensity style of play also lends itself to the other end of the ice. Nikishin is very aggressive at pinching, keeping pucks in, and keeping plays alive. Nikishin often acts as a fourth forward, and you'll find him spending a lot of time deep in the offensive zone, contributing to creating scoring chances. These situations are where the decisiveness in Alexander Nikishin's game stands out the most. Nikishin plays a zero-hesitation game and is incredibly confident when he has the puck. As an extension of his abilities and his desire to keep the play going at the other end of the ice, he generates a lot of high-danger chances of his own. Even with all those capabilities, he generates even more offense off of the rush. With a good hockey IQ that's only going to get better, Alexander Nikishin identifies the perfect time to join the rush and where to find open ice to make himself the best passing option and to maximize his positioning for the best shot opportunity. Another noticeable thing about Alexander Nikishin's game is that he is always mobile. His feet are always moving. Even at his own blue line, he is constantly positioning himself to make the next best play. This adds another layer to his very nuanced offensive game of being a puck distributor and a shooter. Alexander Nikishin also has great vision, and he uses it in all. Good evening, everybody. I hope everyone has had a wonderful Sunday. This will not be as long of a show as yesterday since it's 7:12 already, and I'm just now getting started. I got home a little bit later from work than what I would have liked to, but we are going to still be able to talk about stuff here. I got the slides prepared and everything like that, and of course, we'll do the normal comment responses and all that type of stuff. Speaking of comments, we got a few already. Josh, what's up, buddy? Evening, bro. Hoping for a better performance tonight. I think they will. Last night was, I'll talk a little bit about last night's game before we go into talking about tonight here in a moment. Josh also says, hope Stahl and Ghost is back. They're supposed to both take warm-ups and see how they feel, so I'm hoping so too, that both of them are back, because, you know, there was some moron last night that said all this bullshit about how it was Jordan Stahl's importance to the team was over-exaggerated, and I'm like, the guy goes out there and shuts down top six forwards so that our best players can get more favorable matchups, and not to mention how important he is on the penalty kill, and even little things like how he goes out and takes the opening faceoff in overtime, and most of the time he wins it. I would love to see a statistic on what his percentage is at that. I probably should look that up just so that you can get a more favorable situation and get Aho out there with whoever you want and everything. So, like, people shitting on Jordan Stahl just doesn't make sense to me, especially when he's like not making that damn much money. Like, I understand that, like, we're looking forward to the future with KK being the 3C and everything like that, but Jordo's not washed yet, not at all. But it's just incredibly disrespectful thing to say about the captain of the team, regardless of what criticisms you have of him. But it was by some stupid motherfucker that didn't know what he was talking about. So Dylan Bollinger says, I feel like after last night's performance, I should feel worried going into this game tonight, but I ain't. I'm not either. I'm really not. And I'll get to that as to why. So let's go ahead and get that there. All right. So, of course, the usual disclaimer, I don't own any of the logos or the statistics or anything like that. I do not draft any of the statistics myself. I get them from these various platforms here. In this particular video, it is NHL.com, NHLEdge.com, Hockey Reference, Natural Stat Trick, Money Puck, that I am getting all the stats for this particular endeavor right here. So we'll move on from that right there. Okay, so we know how the last game with the Anaheim Ducks went, and it was a very disappointing end result. And that night, I'm just going to be perfectly honest, Carolina picked the wrong game to play like shit, considering it was Eric Stahl's number retirement. So hopefully they can, get a little bit of revenge here and kind of right the wrong that was, because that game was incredibly painful to watch after such a beautiful ceremony for who is still currently the greatest player in Hurricanes franchise history. Of course, eventually that title is probably going to go to Sebastian Aho. Jacob Slavin is definitely up there, even though he won't have the numbers to put him in the Hall of Fame or anything like that. 74 will definitely be in the rafters one day as well. So there's that to consider. But looking ahead to this game right here, actually, I'll take this off for just a moment. So in regards to the game last night, it actually gave me an idea for something that I want to do in the future, because I figured out how to do it on StreamYard now, where I want to do reviews of each goal. The problem with that is it automatically will get copyright claimed, and that's what I was thinking about doing for a membership tier, where I would do like a weekly breakdown of each goal, or, something like that. I don't know exactly how I'm going to go about that just yet. It would be a YouTube exclusive thing if I did do that, as opposed to having that on X as well. So last night, there were a lot of really bad defensive breakdowns. It's like, it was one of those games where the Hurricanes, I felt like they were hot and cold. They were having sequences where they were really dominant and playing really well and just not getting the results. But then if they weren't doing that, they absolutely sucked. Like, there was no in between. So those goals, I don't put all of them on Kochetkov. In particular, like, I think that there were a lot of really bad defensive breakdowns. Like, for example, the first one that Adrian Kempe scored, that was just a laser. Nobody was going to stop that. Could Burns have gapped up a little bit better? Maybe. But at the same time, it's just there's certain times where you're just not going to beat somebody, especially that has as good of a shot as Adrian Kempe, when he just creates that much time and space for himself, because he read that play really, really well before he positioned himself to shoot the puck. So I don't really put that one on Kochetkov. The second one, Martinook decided to do his best Lionel Messi impression accidentally, and that one went in, and then the wheels just kind of came off from there. But a lot of that was defensive breakdowns and bad luck. I don't think that was Kochetkov's worst game in history. Like, maybe on paper it was definitely not good, but I don't think it was the end of the world for him. Now, I remember a lot of people talking about maybe he should have got pulled. My personal opinion was, if you were going to pull him, you had to do it at the first intermission, and then he would have been able to go tonight after Freddie played the second and the third period last night. But once that ship had sailed, once the second period started, it was way too late for that. So I understand why Rod left him in. But I personally believe that he should have been pulled in the first intermission, and it was too late to do so after that. So, excuse me. That's my whole opinion on that particular discussion that's been going on. I see it both ways. The fact that it's a back-to-back, but I would have pulled him at the first intermission and told him get ready for tomorrow night and then put Anderson in the net. I really think that might have been the better way to go at that point. So let me get this back up here. All right. So we already talked about the last game that we played with Anaheim. We talked about the game from last night. Not much is different on the Hurricane side of things. Their numbers definitely took some hits from that bad of a game last night, but I think that's a one-off. That's an irregularity. That's the exception, not the rule, how bad they played last night. They were due for a loss. You don't normally win 8 in a row in the National Hockey League and then win a 9th. I was hoping for consistency last night, and like I said, it was either they were playing really well or they were playing like shit. There was no in between. There was no shifts where I watched them play and I'm like, oh, that was an all right shift. Okay, we're moving in the right direction. It was either good or bad. So we'll go primarily over Anaheim statistics here. In their last 10 games, they are 4-5-1. They are 16-15-2 at home. They are third in the Pacific Division. This is a team that Carolina absolutely should beat, but it just seems like the Ducks have had our number for years. Goal differential, Anaheim is minus 30 with 186 for, 216 against, versus Carolina that still maintains a plus 40 goal differential at 222 for, 182 against. Goals for per game, Anaheim is only scoring 2.65 per game, and they're giving up 3.10 per game. Power play, Anaheim is one of the few teams in the league that has a worse power play than the Carolina Hurricanes. They are sitting at 13%. Let me fix this audio again here. Okay, got it. They are sitting at 13%. So this is one of those nights where you can get a very, very big special teams net positive, even with Carolina not having the best power play, which is currently sitting at 17.7%, 27th in the NHL. Anaheim is nearly last with theirs at 31st. When you go to the penalty kill, very, very big net positive here. Ignore where it says 9th over there next to Anaheim's penalty kill. It's not supposed to say that. I forgot to update that part. The Hurricanes are currently in 2nd, and the Anaheim Ducks, I believe, were 27th. I just straight up forgot to enter that part. Special teams net positive, Carolina, 51.05%, whereas Anaheim is sitting at 42.8%, so they can't even get an overall net positive in terms of combining between the power play and the penalty kill. So that's one thing the Hurricanes should really, really, really be able to jump on tonight. Face-off percentage, Hurricanes are still sitting in 5th with 52.6. Anaheim is also struggling there with 44.4% for their face-off percentage. So this is a team that's struggling to score and they're struggling to defend. And a lot of the games that they win, it's because of Lucas Dostal and John Gibson and them edging out track meets and winning in high-scoring games, or higher scoring games, that I should say, because they have a harder time defending than they do scoring, but they still have a pretty damn hard time scoring. So this is one of those games where even though the Hurricanes have all the advantages on paper, they still got to get the demons out of their system from how last night went, because it was not just 100% bad play. A lot of it was bad luck. Kochekov was not good. Nobody last night was particularly good, but like I said, when the Hurricanes had a good shift, they had a really good shift. There was just nothing in between. They can't afford to have another game like that tonight. They need to just come out and play their game from the get-go and be really dominant. We'll get into that more here in a little bit. Now, in terms of team leaders, nothing has really changed for the Hurricanes. I did update the numbers there, but there's not really much else to talk about with that. Now, who you have to look out for over here with Anaheim is Frank Vatrano, who has 20 goals, Troy Terry with 29 assists. Those guys are really big scorers for the Ducks. Give me 1 second here. I forgot to input Troy Terry's total points because I know he's leading the team. Okay, so Troy Terry has a total of 51 points. Jackson Lacombe, among their defensemen, this kid's got a really, really bright future as an offensive defenseman. He's got a little bit of a two-way game too, but I definitely think he leans more towards the pure puck-moving type of defenseman. Power play goals, Mason McTavish with 6. Frank Vatrano has 208 shots on goal. Jacob Trouba has 187 shots blocked. Average time on ice, he also leads the Anaheim Ducks with 21.45. I imagine he also leads them in vicious flying elbows that are totally accidents as well. If you can't tell, I don't like that guy. Fuck him. Now, as far as the news and everything goes here, we already saw what happened to Seth Jarvis last night where he crashed into the boards. And before anybody says it, Warren Fogle didn't do anything wrong. That was a hockey play with a unfortunate result. Right now, it looks like Shane Gostisbehere, Seth Jarvis, Jordan Stahl are all going to take warm-ups, and we're going to see how that goes. And considering those are starting in a few minutes, I wouldn't be surprised if we get a projected lineup here shortly that we can talk about. For the Ducks, you have their lines are projected as follows: Frank Vetrano, Ryan Strome, Troy Terry. That line right there is the one that you really, really have to watch out for, if you ask me, because that's where pretty much all their offense is coming from, at least on paper. That's who their top scoring guys are and everything like that. When you look at the second line there, you got two players in particular who have a very bright future in this league, and that's Cutter Gauthier and Leo Carlson. That's another line that's going to provide a decent amount of offense, and they've got an experienced guy there with Alex Killorn, who is known for being a grinder, but a pretty skilled grinder at that. So he's going to go dig pucks out and forecheck and all that type of stuff. The first line there is particularly dynamic because all three of those guys are fast and they're very good possession players. Not the best line defensively, but in the offensive zone, that one can give you problems. Kind of like what we were talking about with the Kempe line last night, that those guys were going to be the most problematic ones that the Hurricanes were going to have, and the three of them were credited with the first 3 goals, just to give an example of that. And Adrian Kempe ended up having 2, if I remember correctly. Third line, Nesterenko, McTavish, Zegras. Trevor Zegras is not doing that great this season, and I've always thought he's not the player people think that he is. I think he's more of a trick shot artist than he is anything. That being said, he's still a very dangerous player when he has the puck in the offensive zone. He can create time and space for himself and for his teammates, and he distributes the puck pretty well. The defensive side of the game, it's not there for him. That being said, he's still someone that you don't want to have possession if you can help it. Harkins, Ludestrom, Leeson for a fourth line there. And then when we're moving on to the defense here, Carolina has an even bigger advantage tonight than they have most nights. Jackson Lacombe, Radko Gudas. So there's some physicality there, especially from Radko Gudas. And that's another thing you have to consider here. Jacob Trouba's on the second pair with Zellweger. So that defense, there's some physicality in regards to their top 4 there, especially from Gudas and Trouba. Pavel Mintyukov, Hellison, and Shillington is the healthy extra there. Lucas Dostal will be starting for them, and that's another guy that has a bright future. Anaheim is a couple of years away from being a much better team once they draft and develop some more guys and everything, but they definitely have the framework there for it, if you ask me, especially when you're talking if Trevor Zegras can ever get the two-way game together. Leo Carlson's going to be a very good player. Frank Vetrano is very good, and he's going to help develop those guys around him. And Jackson Lacombe as well. Of course, I already mentioned Cutter Gauthier. So Lucas Dostal, though, might be the really big cornerstone of that franchise in the future because we've seen what he's done against Carolina. He's a very, very good goalie. All right, so speed. Carolina has a decent advantage here, 24.49 max speed versus 23.7. That being said, the Ducks do have a lot of really fast players. They got a couple of guys who kind of slow down that average, but for the most part, they're a pretty quick team. Especially guys like Zegras and Troy Terry are very fast. Skating distance, 9.22 versus 9.09. Carolina leads in that regard. Top mileage per game, 48.57 for the Ducks, 47.86 for Carolina. Top per period, 16.81 for the Hurricanes, 16.24 for the Ducks. Now, one thing I want to point out why the Ducks are maybe covering more ice than the Hurricanes is they're having to make up for a lot of their own mistakes. They don't manage the puck very well in a lot of situations, especially in the neutral zone and especially at the defensive blue line and then the defensive zone itself. It seems like they have a hard time really cycling or making good outlet passes, having good zone exits. But this team is really good once it gets to the offensive side of the blue line. They do have quick transition. It's just sometimes they mismanage the puck on entry. Does it sound familiar? But with this team, I think it's more of a lack of experience. It's youth. It's the fact that they're in the middle of a rebuild, which is where that's a little bit more of a problem why it's a little bit more of a problem. All right, so another night where the Hurricanes actually have a pretty big advantage in terms of scoring potential. And the Hurricanes they're volume shooters. We all know that, but they're way ahead of Anaheim here. 2,185 shots on goal to 1,886 for Anaheim. So Anaheim's not shooting the puck a ton. And when they do, it's not going in. Their shooting percentage is sub 10% at 9.7. They've only scored on 183 goals when compared to Carolina scoring 222. And Carolina is still sitting at a 10.2 shooting percentage. Again, I would like to get that up to like 12% thereabouts. And I think that would be a drastic improvement for the Hurricanes to sit around there with, as good as they are defensively, they would get a really good net positive out of bumping up the shooting percentage a little bit and making more things happen at the end of the ice that they're not as good at than the defensive zone. One thing to consider there. All right, zone time. Again, Hurricanes dominant all the way through here. Like I said, the Ducks have a hard time with puck management in the neutral zone and the defensive zone, but it's particularly more difficult in the defensive zone. They have a hard time with zone exits. They have a hard time with outlet passes. So this is one of those nights where the Hurricanes really need to get on the forecheck. The pinching needs to be extra aggressive. If you do that tonight, you're going to hem them in their own zone. That being said, you'll notice that they don't have a ton of offensive zone time, but depending on which players are out there, or Anaheim doesn't have a ton of offensive zone time, but depending on which players are out there, they can make you pay in a very short amount of time if you let them stay there for too long. So take advantage of the fact the Hurricanes need to take advantage of the fact that they're better at the zone exits. They're better at the outlet passes. They're better at the transition game, and make that what really works in their favor tonight against Anaheim is how quickly they can move the puck up ice, how cleanly they can do it, and how poorly Anaheim manages the puck in a lot of situations. All right. Goalie matchup, edge data. The matchup tonight is Frederik Andersen and Lukas Dostal. Now, Dostal is a much better goalie than what I think his numbers are showing. He's on a team that can't score at one end and definitely can't keep it out of their own net. So, even though he's 20-18-6, he has a 2.96 save percentage and a goals against average of 2.96 and a save percentage of 0.908 in 44 games played. Like I said, I think those numbers are very deceptive for him. Freddie, we don't have as big of a sample size for him since he came back from injury before, but he has 10 wins, 5 losses, no overtime losses, goals against average of 2.08, save percentage of 915, and like I said, 15 games played. Now, it'll be a big boost to the guys for Freddie if he can have a good game tonight so that they can really put what happened last night in the rearview mirror. Like I said, I don't put 100% of that on Kochekov, but it was not a good goaltending performance on his part. It just really was not. So that's one of those things that if Freddie can have a good night tonight, I think that it'll radiate and it'll make its way to the rest of the team and get things going back in the right direction, because that can be a devastating loss last night. But like I said, it was not a typical 6-1 loss. It was just a weird game, and it's a good time for them to come back from it. Freddie can be a really key part of that. So Dostal, you'll notice most of the goals he's giving up are right there in the dead slot area, right there. If you can work your way into the interior of the ice, which shouldn't be as difficult as it is against a lot of other teams because Anaheim doesn't defend very well. If you can manage to do that, you'll be able to put a lot of shots on Lukas Dostal, create a lot of second chances, create a lot of rebound opportunities, and those will be advantageous tonight just out of the simple fact that Anaheim just doesn't defend the best. Like I said, they're not good at zone exits. They're not good at making outlet passes, and part of the reason for that is they're not good at cleaning up rebounds. They're not good at puck retrievals down below the goal line. So this is one of those nights where you can get the pucks in behind the defense. If you can't get clean entries, go to work to the interior, get to the front of the net, and put shots on this guy. Like I said, I think he's a better goalie than what his numbers show. So tonight, just work your way to the interior, put shots on net, go to work. This is going to be a game where you just really have to grind. You may have the advantage on paper. You may have more skill than them ultimately, but make the most of the time in the offensive zone. Limit how much time that they have in Carolina's defensive zone. Because like I said, they do have a few players that can hurt you. It's kind of like I've talked about this before with Utah. You don't necessarily really have to shut down lines when it comes to Anaheim, maybe their first line. But overall, it's more so you're shutting down individual players. And also they got a couple of agitating guys on the blue line in particular, i.e. Radko Gudas and Jacob Trouba. Don't get drawn in any stupid shit after the whistle. Take a bunch of stupid penalties. And in that regard, you should be fine as well. All right, so potential advantages here. Overall 5-on-5 play, I'm taking the Canes. Scoring forwards, I'm taking the Ducks, but it's very close. The only reason I say that, they do have a lot of very talented guys as far as the offensive side of the game goes. Zegras, even though he's struggling, he's still a very talented offensive player. It's just everything else that he's not good at.
Troy Terry is also a very, very gifted player on the offensive side of the puck. Overall forward depth, I'm going with the Canes there. The Ducks, they don't really have depth. It's not very good. All 6 defensemen, taking the Canes there. Power play unit 1, for once, I'm going to say that the Canes have a better top power play unit than the Ducks, even though the Ducks do have a little bit more firepower up there than what their record shows this year. Overall power play, if we're talking both units, I think the Canes are ultimately better there, and that's just because the Ducks have a lack of experience in that regard, and they're still building their new core. Penalty kill, Canes, very, very big advantage there tonight. Goaltending, Ducks, I was kind of on the fence about saying Freddie there. The only reason I didn't say Freddie is because on an individual basis, I think Lucas Dostal, like I said, is a better goaltender than what his numbers show. And we don't have a very big sample size of Freddie. It's only 15 games, even though he's won twice as many as he's lost. So the Ducks, if they do win tonight, it'll probably be on the back of a really, really great performance by Lucas Dostal. And overall advantage, I didn't mean to have close down there. That was supposed to say Canes overall. The Canes do have the big advantage here. So let me go ahead and remove this here and get to some of the comments. Dylan Bollinger says, I got Janky scoring tonight. Yeah, I would like to see him score a game because, let's see, 5 goals. Let's see. 5 goals, 6 games, 7 shots. That's pretty unreal. I think that's what his stat line is in regards to shooting. Like, that's insane since he's been a Cane. All Canes Network says, I'm late, but what's up? What's up, buddy? Good to see you. All Canes Network says, Canes have the advantage on the power play in this economy. Yeah, this is the one time that they have it. And Anaheim is not good at defending, whether it's 5-on-5 or when they're on the penalty kill. So this is a night where you need to get the net positives on special teams, and you need to get it big. There's no reason why you don't get it. Please get a power play goal tonight and have a good night 5-on-5. Get back on track, all that type of stuff. There was one other thing I forgot to cover here. That actually ties into this right here. Winning elements. Have a short memory. Put last night in the rearview mirror. That's why I was talking about Freddie having a good performance, because Kochekov, even though it wasn't all on him, he was not good last night. So getting the confidence back in the guys that, you know, whoever is between the pipes can stop the puck for them when they need it and make timely saves and bail them out, that'll go a long way towards putting that game behind you. Get back to basics, stop the defensive zone breakdowns. The defensive zone breakdowns you saw from Carolina tonight are a regular occurrence for the Anaheim Ducks. So there's no reason why Carolina shouldn't walk away with 4 or 5 goals out of this game. I'm not expecting them to, but we'll see. I think that Carolina will win, but it's not going to be a high event game that they win. That's just the way that I'm anticipating it. Don't chase the game. This is one of those nights where you should score first. This is the Anaheim Ducks you're playing against in 2025. You can get a lead against them even with not having last change. Lastly, if you want to win tonight, dominate. This is a inexperienced rebuilding team, and the guys that are experienced have much more of their career behind them than they do ahead of them. So this is one of those nights where you can take advantage of that. Much faster team. You can get it done. So let's get that off there, get to some more comments. So we were scoring 2 shorties tonight. Sounds good. Yeah, we might be the only team in the history of the National Hockey League that has a better chance of scoring on the penalty kill than they do on the power play, and it being that much of a difference. Like, it's kind of fucking insane. Dylan Bollinger, what's up, dude? I haven't seen official update to who's in and who's out yet. No, I have not either. They should be taking warm-up right now, so we might know in a second. I will go here on X and see if there is any new developments in regards to that. Let me see what old Walt here has to say. Nothing yet. I haven't seen anything yet, but I'll keep that pulled up. I'll pull up look at Corey Lavalette too. See if he's posted anything yet. Nope, nothing yet. The only thing that we know for sure is no Svechnikov, but we already knew that. Av Clark says, I really wish RVA would just bench Orlov. Morrow was so fast and smart with the puck. Only thing I saw wrong with his gap control. Yeah, and he's aware of that too. Morrow's aware of that. There was an article that Ryan Hinkle put out where he interviewed Morrow, and Morrow was talking about how he was trying to improve, tightening up his gaps and everything. And that's one thing that once he figures that out, he'll be fine because he can skate well enough to have tighter gaps and he's got size. So it's just a matter of being, instead of, he was even talking about being within a stick length, and a lot of times that's not enough. The higher of a level you play at, the closer and tighter and more attentive you need to be in your gap control. So, when you're playing at lower levels and everything like that, you might be able to get away with being within a stick length of somebody, stepping up on them at the right time and preventing them from getting the puck, because if they do get the puck, you have to work harder. Morrow even said that in the interview. So that's one thing. Once he figures it out, he'll be fine. But, that's been his progression, because I remember watching him at UMass. Offensive side of the game, incredibly, proficient at that. I've got the hiccup. Sorry, guys. Damn it. At the offensive side of the game, Morrow has always been incredibly proficient. It's what got him drafted to begin with. And at UMass, I remember watching how on the defensive side of the game, it was the gap control that was a problem. But once he got to somebody, normally he didn't have a problem, laying the body on him a little bit, making contact, getting the stick in there, finding some sort of way to get the puck away from him. It was everything before that. So closing up the gaps is going to be really beneficial to him in the future as far as his development as a player as a whole, because like he was saying in the interview, it's a lot easier to gap up on somebody preemptively and just keep them from getting possession of the puck, keep them from getting positive control in advance, as opposed to having to work harder to get the puck away from them once they have possession of it. So that's one thing that I think that he'll figure out. But as far as having possession goes and everything like that, he's always had that. Or as far as what he does with possession, generating breakouts and everything, creating offense at the blue line and working in tight, he's had that already. And every level that he went to, for example, when he was playing at UMass, the defensive side of the game, the lack of gap control, he slowly got better at that to the point where it became less of a problem. Then he goes to play for the Wolves in the American League. And then he starts getting a little bit better at the gaps. And then it got to a point where it was not as noticeable of a flaw in his game. And then he will repeat that exact same process at the NHL level. Ideally, he will repeat that exact same process at the NHL level. And then eventually Morrow goes from a pure offensive defenseman to a more offensively minded two-way defenseman, kind of like Ghost is, for example, like how Burns was when he was younger in his career. That's the stuff that I think that you got to look at there. Dylan Bollinger says, how big is Morrow? I will tell you in 2 seconds. I think he's like 6'2". 6'2", 6'3". He's a big kid. 6'2", 210 pounds. So he's definitely got the size to be physical. So, and, to defend with physicality and have tighter gaps and everything like that. But the higher of a level you play at, the tighter your gaps have to be, because the quicker that things happen. And the worse your gap is, the more likely that bad things happen when you're not gapped up on them. And that's basically what he said in that article where Brian Henkel was interviewing him. B says, so are you expecting Morrow, Ghost, and Nikishin as the more offensive defenseman on the team? Yes, absolutely. One thing I've said on reoccurring occasions in regards to Ghost, the defensive side of his game is very, very underrated. Like, a lot of people see, oh, well, he was a minus this and minus that. And I'm like, well, if you're still thinking plus minus is a good stat to have an idea if a player is good defensively or not in 2025, I don't know what to tell you. It's been proven over and over again that plus minus is, one, the way they record it is stupid, because if you're a net positive, you're a net positive. If you score on the power play, you don't get a plus, but the other team gets a minus. And then 5-on-5, don't even get me started on the only time that plus minus should even be recorded, in my opinion, is at even strength. That, whether it's 5-on-5 or 4-on-4, whatever you want to do, that's the only time it should be recorded. And even then, I can't count the number of times that somebody's gotten a minus and they had nothing to fucking do with it. Someone takes a penalty and get a minus, from the other team scoring a power play goal. The guy in the box doesn't get a minus, but the guys on the ice do. So that's one thing that people don't realize in regards to the whole plus minus thing. But they often try to weaponize that stat as saying a player is bad defensively, even though I remember posting video clips of Gostisbehere making really, really good defensive plays, and they still try and say, but my XGA, but Dom Licka, whatever the fuck his name is over at the Athletics, said that he was bad defensively. Look at this chart. Look at this heat map. That shit will never replace the eye test. You can quantify offense pretty easily. You can quantify possession pretty well nowadays because hockey's a threefold game: offense, possession, and defense. It's not just offense and defense. Defense, at the end of the day, you will never quantify it with any chart, with any heat map, and any type of numbers, so long as the criteria of what a takeaway, a giveaway, a hit, a block, things like that, until that criteria is more clearly defined and recorded the same across the board, you won't even have an accurate reflection of it then. But there's a lot of times where people make really, really good defensive plays because they're in the right place at the right time, and there's no number to reflect it, because if they're in the right place at the right time, that stops somebody from making a pass, that stops somebody from making a clean entry, that forces somebody to dump a puck in when it was not what they wanted to do. All those types of things. Until such time as those types of things are changed, you will not quantify defense with numbers, with heat maps, with charts, and even then that will never tell the story. It just won't. And that's one of the things that annoys me the absolute most about it, is a lot of times when you're defending well, there is nothing numerically valuable to reflect that you did your job. Nothing. Actually, that gives me a good idea about something. Give me a second. I'm gonna grab something here.
Check what is now
Ah, damn it.
Canadian defense.
Now let me find this particular part.
For the United States.
Because one part here,
Trailing Connor centers and Bennington's best.
I gotta find it. Hold on.
One off the skate of Braden Point that they've ever put together for an international competition. Steps in with
Let me find it.
pop from Dowdy. Trying to charge to the ball. Crosby.
This is the one right here. Yep, this is it. Okay, so I'm going to show you guys something here with this, frame by frame. There is absolutely nothing in terms of statistics that can quantify what Jacob Slavin does here. Slavin gets the puck here, right? Jacob Slavin, I wish I had a way to like point this stuff out like with my mouse or whatever, but Jacob Slavin, he's right there underneath the face-off dot that's right underneath the Rogers logo. And this is what happens when you have good positioning and good gaps. This is Nathan MacKinnon, mind you, one of the best players on the planet. You know, some may argue even the best one. Didn't give him anything. He didn't give him. Slavin totally took his real estate away. He just told one of the best players, get the hell out of my zone. And he didn't even like have to step up on him, try to go for a poke check, hit him, anything, all because he was positioned so well. Nothing quantifies defense mathematically, statistically, or otherwise. And I don't give a goddamn what all the stat bros say. It's not possible. You can use all the algorithms in the world you want. It does not account for just doing the little things well. It's what we refer to in hockey as intangibles. Slavin has a ton of them, just to name one. But I wanted to show that there. All right, so let me go through the rest of the comments here, and then I'm going to get ready to watch the game. Av Clark says, also speaking of Morrow, I know Burns loves Carolina. I hope he retires at the end of the postseason and returns like a D-man scout and coach. Yeah, I could see that, but he also has that ranch in Texas, and he also really loved San Jose. But I like Burnsy, but I cannot stand the idea of him coming back next season, not when we have a replacement pretty much ready that has nothing left to learn at the American Hockey League level. Dylan Bollinger says, Av, also what I was thinking too, he'd be great in a role like that. Yeah, I could see that. Dylan Bollinger says, Walt said would be the case. Everybody on the trip is on the ice for warm-up, and we'll find out shortly who can and can't go. Yeah, I talked about that at one of the earlier slides, so we'll see what happens there. Dylan also says, I tried to copy and paste most that didn't work out. So good, my bad. No problem, buddy. Todd Davis, what's up, buddy? I think you only get a minus on the PP if the team on the PP gives up a shorthanded goal. No, if you are on the penalty kill and the other team scores a power play goal, you get a minus. That's one of the reasons I don't like the way that's recorded. I don't think that it should be recorded at anything other than even strength, and honestly 5-on-5, because it's like 4-on-4. It's like, how often does that happen? Out of the entire 60 minutes in a game, you might see 2 minutes 4-on-4. It's probably an average of less than a minute per game that it's played 4-on-4 because of offsetting minors or abbreviated penalties or anything like that. But yeah, no, that's the way that's recorded. I don't like the way it's done at all. That's something that if I ever had my way, that would have been changed already or just thrown out entirely. Because one of the things that Dauber's Frozen Tools does, they record power play and penalty kill as percentages for individual players. And I think that more accurately reflects the impact that somebody has on a situation like that than anything else. Mike Stramaglio, what's up, buddy? Kane smarting from a good beating should be fired up for this game, or should be up for this game. Yeah, I agree. All Canes Network, RBA says the Canes are fighting a flu bug. Can we stop getting sick? 2 flu bugs in 1 year, man. Jeez. Also, Canes have 20 skaters on the ice. Well, yeah, we'll see how everyone is. See how everyone's doing. I just hope that they're careful about putting Jarvis back in the lineup. I think that they just took him out on a precautionary basis last night because that game was already a foregone conclusion and there was no point in risking anything. Just let him get the rest of the night off and rest up after that, because that was not pretty the way that he went into the boards like that with his head snapping and everything. What's up, William? Is Jarvie healthy? We'll see. He's warming up, so hopefully he plays. But if he doesn't, I wouldn't be surprised if they just have him sit one more day just to be precautionary about it. Because if you look at the standings right now, there's the New Jersey Devils, I believe, are 8 points behind the Hurricanes, and the Hurricanes have 2 games in hand, 3 games in hand, something like that. It's almost a foregone conclusion at this point, so long as the Hurricanes continue to play well enough that they're going to finish second in the Metro. And we don't have any more games with New Jersey during the regular season. We've already played all 4 of them. So I just don't see much of a point in really taking unnecessary risks right now. It's not like the Hurricanes are fighting for wild card 2. They're second in the division. If people need to rest, I say let them do it. This, especially like on night like tonight, you're playing a non-playoff team in the Western Conference. Tonight's not one of those nights that if the guy is not 100%, I just don't see any point in putting him on the ice, especially when we have everybody else there. Yeah, but he's warming up, according to Walt. Williams says epic. All right, cool. All right, everybody, that is going to be it for me tonight. But I will not be doing damage report tonight, just out of the simple fact that it's late on a Sunday, or it would be late on a Sunday. But I'll be doing my normal posting on X during the game and everything like that. So thank you, everybody, very much for joining me. It's been a lot of fun, like always. Let's have a good bounce back game tonight. And I am planning on doing Landfall Hour on Tuesday night. I don't see any reason why I wouldn't. And I will be saying many obscenities and negative things about Brady Shea. If you know, you know. Thank you very much. I will see y'all next time.